Alright, now that we have the out-of-the-box Ubuntu up and running, we need to install OpenVPN. And one thing we want to select here is EasyRSA because we're going to need that. Just do a copy. Okay. Clear that to make it a little easier. Alright, now we need to make a directory to put this stuff in. In this case, I just created this a second ago, but so it says file exists. And if not, what you would actually have to do is, unless you want to create each individual directory, you could do -P, and that will, if it's not there, it'll create all the directories needed to get down to that point. I'm actually reading this off of the helpubuntu.com site on configuring the client. So user share doc OpenVPN examples easy, and once again the site's wrong, so let's go to user share doc OpenVPN and look around. And I had this problem the last time. Sample config files. Figure this out on the fly. Okay. And there should be an EasyRSA it's not there. Find dot pipe grep -I easy. So now I've got to go figure out how to get a hold of EasyRSA. Okay, so after digging around for a while, I actually located the EasyRSA files, and they are in user share EasyRSA. Well, actually I did a CP, sorry about that. So CP-R star and then to etc OpenVPN. There we go. I'm not going to type that because I just spent the last 2 hours adjusting a file, which I'm going to show you the adjustments I made. And one of the reasons I'm making this video is for you as well as for myself, because inevitably I end up forgetting a few little steps with this EasyRSA package that caused me to go doing some digging. I actually have this tarred up, so I moved from one machine to the next, but for the new installs, in case you don't have that, that's what this video will be good for. So we're just going to assume that I actually hit return there, and those files have copied, and then your directory would look something like this. There's also, I had done a sudo chown chown user 01, let's see, R for this directory, basically the EasyRSA directory, I changed the ownership from root to the user01 directory, so that I can maintain these without actually operating at root. Anytime you can configure software on a Unix Linux box and not access elevated permissions, it's a very good thing for security. It takes a little getting used to, but once you get used to operating in that mode, your boxes will be a lot more secure. So at any rate, we've got the files here, and here's the thing that took the long time. So the PKI tool, actually almost all these scripts depend on the values that are set in this vars. So what you end up doing is, once you've got everything in this directory, you want to modify the vars file. And what took me so long was I stripped this down thinking that I didn't need all of these exports in here. For example, where OpenSSL was, the PKS11 tool, and so I copied the one, had to restart over, basically went through and just simply modified, for example, my export key size. I wanted that to be a little larger, to the 2048 instead of 1024, and my key expire, I changed that. And then this is really just up to you on what you want to set for your country, province, city, all that kind of stuff. So they already come set with the default one that comes with the package install when you do a apt-get for EasyRSA. But just set all of those variables, and then do a source vars, source/vars. Okay, and it's simply reminding you that if you run the clean all script, it is going to whack everything that you've already created. So if you've come in here before and already set up your certificate authority and things along those lines, you want to be careful about running this again. In this case, I definitely want to run it because I do want to whack it, because I've not actually used any of the keys or anything that's in here. So that's going to create the directory structures needed. Then we run build DH. And if any of these scripts fail to run, it means they're not finding the variables you've got in the vars file. So check things like quotes around the variables that you've got in there. Okay, as promised, it took a while to run. Init certificate authority. Okay, and then create the server key. And what that did was it read all of those variables that you had already configured in the vars file and plugged them in here. So if there's any of these variables that you don't like, you can go change those in the vars file and just rerun those last couple steps. Rerun the clean all, the build DH, and the PKI tool initca, and then the PKI tool --server server, and that'll set everything back up. So if you get all the way to this point and you don't like it, you just start all over. It's really quick, as you can just see. Okay, now we need to create the TA key file. And then we need to copy all these files up to the server that we're going to run OpenVPN server on. And there's going to be a whole nother video on how to set up users and what you should do with keys and things along those lines, as far as being able to log into remote boxes and stuff. Keeping it simple for the purposes of this one, I had just created the user 1 on this box, on the .50 box, and had to add it to admin so that I could do su do to copy these files into the right locations. So I need to run OpenVPN. And then we need to copy those files into the, oops. All right, it's got that. Okay, the next thing we have to do is create the server.conf file, and I've already actually done that to do some testing and make sure this went smoothly. So let's take a look at that file and explain a little bit about what's in here. So your port number 1194 is pretty much a standard port for OpenVPN. You can change that if you need to for whatever reason. The protocol, it can be TCP or UDP, the device TUN or TAP, and then this is where the file, the excuse me, the server.conf file aligns with the files that you created earlier with the EasyRSA process. So the certificate authority, you're simply saying CA cert, your server key, your private handshake key, basically between the server and your client. Both of you guys will need to use this a little bit later. The network that you're going to use for the VPN between the client and the server. And in this case, I've just put a net mask of 255 out of there, so that effectively turns it into a Class C, or 254 addresses that I can use. The pool persist, I'm not completely sure about what that is, but that was something I've seen in all the other examples. And then one of the things I do is I actually send all of my traffic through the VPN. So what we're doing is we're redirect gateway setting it to default, and we're also pushing the DHCP options in the DNS. So if you've got another DNS server you want to use, you can change that right here. This one is actually the Google one. Now the thing to keep in mind is a lot of these things, when you first set them up, their DHCP is set to 127.0.0.1, and that may be the case with this instance of Ubuntu. I haven't went and checked it. You may want to Google something called DNS leaks. So you may have to actually change this, and actually I can check that right now, resolve.conf. And no, so this one is pointing, actually, it got the DHCP, since this one's set up on DHCP, it got this from my router that this one's on. So we're good, so that should route through. But if just be aware that OpenVPN does not route traffic destined for 127.0.0.1, basically the local loopback. Your keep alive settings for keeping the connection alive, you're actually going to do compression on it, maximum clients 100, probably ought to set that to 2 or 3, but at any rate. And then you're going to persist the key, the network device, which is the ton we selected earlier, setting up a log for it, and then the verbosity on the logs is set to 3. Okay, so to make sure it's clean, you can issue a sudo and stop, and then it's not running. And then if you issue a start, it should tell you it's running. And if you want to make sure it's running, do a netstat -an and grep 1194, which was the port number that we had in the config file. And there it is, so it is listening. So at this point we should be able to go back to the client box, and work on, there we go, now we're back to user 1 on the Ubuntu box that we had created, and we'll work on configuring the client here. Alright, now that we're back on this box, we want to go into the RSA directory, source vars, and we want to create the certificate for the local client part of OpenVPN here. So PKI tool, and in this case we're just going to call it Ubuntu. If you have like a laptop, you can call it laptop, whatever the host name is that you're going to be using for the client. And it has created an additional entry right out to the database, one new entry. Alright, now let's go over the client.config part of this setup. So OpenVPN is really picky about what you name things. So we've been using server this whole time. So we'll point out some options here in the configuration file. So we named it server.config. In reality, we probably could have called it the host name of that it was going to run on the server, but take a look through there. Anyhow, server.config. So we defined that this is a client configuration file. Some of the same items are in the server file: ton, protocol UDP, and then I actually have an entry in my Etsy host file that defines Thunder as the IP address for the server that it's on, and no bind, going to resolve retry infinite number of times. We are using TLS client. Similar items here, the CA certificate file, this is the one we just copied over. The cert file and the key file this time are the ones that we had created for the client, the Ubuntu ones. Cert type server, pick our ciphers, and this is important. The TLS remote server in this case is because we had set this up, and server is actually listed in the certificate itself. So in this case, you're not dealing with a type as in server client, you're dealing with a name. And that's what I was referring to a moment ago about the host names. Would have made this a little bit more clear. So if you get this far and you start you run the connect command line that I'm going to show you in a little bit, and it blows up and it's complaining about not being able to validate the X509 certificate, you might want to go in here and play around with this TLS remote, unless you set names up exactly like I've done here. Okay, and then remote is the server as well, because we just have these two match, and then they're again compressing it, persisting. We're muting the replay warnings, verbosity. They're again explicitly picking the redirect gateway, and then we're locking it. So, all right, now so the command to actually make this work is a little complicated. It's something that I had to dig up, so I'm sure there may be somebody out there that can do this a little bit better. But let me explain what I'm doing here. All right, so we have, of course, sudo as well, because we're actually doing a fair clip of redirection here from a permissions perspective. So the script security, I can't actually recall why I had to do that, but if I don't do that, it won't start properly. And then here's the fun part. So the config tells it where the configuration directory is that you want to use. So that's why we put the server directory under the home directory and called it server config. That just points to the file that we were looking at right here. And then you just simply hit enter. And we can just scroll back here a little bit and see kind of what you should see from a logging perspective as to what happened. Okay, so we've got a depreciated option. Probably could research that a little bit later. The various build information that we've got, the sockets, the UDP that we're using, the IP address we're going to. And so you end up with things like verify OK, certificate key, another verify OK, and this is where the TLS web server authentication stuff comes in, and the X509. And if you don't get those things I was talking about right earlier in the config file, this step right here will blow up on you, and that's usually what takes me the longest amount of time when I set this up. I always forget to deal with that. So all your different various handshakes and steps, your various ciphers, it tells you what it's selecting, and then it shows you that it's actually doing a push information, pushing those options that you had set on the configure side, on the server side, down, and gives you the IP addresses and things that we're set up for. So just to prove that this works, let's go over here and open a new terminal, and then we're going to actually SSH 2.1. And so as you can see right down here, we're using that's our IP address range that we're using between these two computers now. Now the computer I'm SSHing to, even though it's connected via Ethernet, it's always been slow about responding to SSHs. So that's how normally that should have come back a lot faster than that, but it's just this particular computer that I'm SSHing to that does that. There we go, and we're in. So now we've established a VPN connection between two computers in the same geographic location, although albeit they're on different LANs through a firewall. And there's one more point I have to show you that you want to set on the server side. If you're going to plan on routing all of your traffic through the other server for purposes of masking your IP or what have you, but if you're just simply trying to connect the two boxes together, this part of the demo is all you need. Okay, the one last tip that I want to leave with you is, if you're going to use this to route through route all of your traffic through the server into this, so you're trying to mask where you're coming from kind of thing, you'll need to set up some network address translation on the server side, and that let me just hop out of here, close this, make this a little bit cleaner, close that window, and you can just press Control-C over here to stop that from running. So it would look something like this on the server, not on your client. Okay, now here's where you're going to need the IP address of the server that you were connecting to. So for the example that we were just using, it's going to be 192.168.10.50. If you are leasing a server from any of the providers on the internet, like a VM server or what have you, they'll need to turn on the ton of the tap abilities. So like OpenVPN or something like that, you'll have to turn that on. And then what you would do is, of course, instead of using this .50 address, you would use the IP address of whatever that server is that you're leasing. But this is going to be the server IP address. And so what this does is when you send traffic from your client through the server, and then the server tries to send it out to somewhere else, some of the website, the network address translation stuff, or the NAT, in this case SNAT, will rewrite the packet so that it knows how to come back to the server that sent it. Else, what will happen if you don't do this is it'll try to send a packet out with the address of 10.10.0.1, I think. And of course that's not going to get anywhere. So just be aware that you may want to put this in your config files for starting up your server. So if you reboot or something, it's still there. If not, then just put it in a script or something so that that you can run this. And this little guy was about 6 hours worth of research. Could not figure out why I could SSH to the box just fine. The VPN was working just fine, but I could not route through it. And that's part of it. This little guy is very important here. Hope you enjoyed it. Fill out any comments, or what have you, and I'll try to respond promptly. Thank you.